Before calling this meeting to order, I want to share that our meeting this evening is a study session focused on the Oak Hill Housing Project. Please note it's a study session only. The board will not be taking action at this meeting. We will hear public comment on the Oak Hill Housing Project after the presentation and board discussion. Speaker cards are usually not necessary at a study session, but if we have a large number of speakers, we may ask you to complete a speaker card to enable us to efficiently organize public comment. Kim, would you like me to ask for a show of hands on how many people are going to speak, or would that be?
Sure.
Okay, could you just raise your hand if you plan on speaking so we can get an idea? So we won't be needing cards, I guess. That's good. Okay, so I'll call the meeting to order.
I have a question. Why are we hearing this presentation? My understanding is that the board doesn't have any authority or has already conceded its authority. And if we don't have any authority to do anything, why are we having a study session?
President Spencer, I recommend you call the meeting to order before you have any discussion about anything.
Thank you. Was about to. Okay, I would like to call this meeting to order. I don't have my gavel, but I'm gonna count on the table. The meeting is called to order. John Carroll, roll call, please.
So beautiful. Right, Cindy Johansson.
Hi.
Video Penn. Nancy McCarthy.
Present.
Miriam Netzer. Eddie Garbarino.
Here.
Joe Sartori. Curtis Rose, present.
Okay,
I still have the same outstanding question. Why are we having this board session if we don't have any authority over any decision making with respect to this matter?
Maybe we can entertain board questions at the end of the
I
presentation.
think I'm gonna ask
But
for
why are we having a
approval and
presentation?
adoption of the agenda and want to
Okay,
vote on that. So board members, we like to move approval of the agenda.
Move approval.
Okay, okay, all in favor?
I oppose that because I don't understand why we are doing this. I've asked multiple times and I have not gotten an answer as to what this board's role is at this time, if any, with respect to the Oak Hill project. No one will answer that question. So why are we having a board meeting? I can't get an answer to that question.
Maybe this meeting will help you understand that
That
question.
won't give me an answer to the question. It's just gonna tell me about what the project is, and I've been to 3 sessions already. So I know what the Oak Hill project is. But why is this board having a study session? Because my understanding is that legally, the story that I've been told, that we don't have any role in this. If it's just the superintendent, and if we've already ceded our role in this, the public needs to know that, as do we.
I don't think
Do
this,
you know what our role is?
is this the time that we want, that we?
We have a lot of people here for the presentation,
Yeah,
so why
so
don't we
we
not
should do
waste
it.
everybody's time, we'll have the presentation. And we can-
That isn't a matter of asking questions afterward. This is a procedural question and it's a really important question. Because why is everybody gonna sit here and talk if in fact we don't have any role? If we don't have any role, but why are they talking to us? Maybe talk to somebody else, but not talk to us. I mean, we really want to let the public know what role we have as opposed to faking it and making it appear that somehow or another, talking to us or having a study session with us has any value whatsoever. I think there's been a real misleading of the public about what this board does, what it can do, and what it has done. And I think that's very unfair to the public.
Trustee McCarthy, you were not here when the board approved the ability for us to sit here today and have this project go forward. We all voted to have this project go forward. Now we're here and we're gonna have an education session. You were not at the meeting when we all voted to make this happen. So please, hold your comments till the question and answer
I looked at
session.
every single board meeting, I looked at every single minute, and I've asked for every single one of the questions. And I am told that this board does not have any authority at this time to make any decisions whatsoever with respect to the Oak Hill.
We're not here to make decisions today, we're here to learn and,
For what?
but there are other people here also who are here to listen and learn. Not just the board, I'd like to move on, please, so,
I'll continue
we're
to
now going to
register,
have
I'll continue to register my comments that until this board knows what its authority is, if anything, on the Oak Hill project, it is full authority and it is misrepresenting to the public that we have any authority.
we're going to move on now. Discussion item 2.1 is the discussion of the Oak Hill housing project and the participant guarantee agreement. We're first going to hear a presentation from staff, and the board members may ask questions. We will then take public comment after the presentation and the board questions. Mr. Libby.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all that are attending this evening for this session to provide information to our board and to the public about this exciting project. We're pleased to have this opportunity to update you about the Oak Hill Apartments and more specifically about the Affordable Housing Guarantor Financing Program that is currently under consideration. Joining us this evening as part of the project team is Matthew Heimel. Matthew served for 18 years as the administrator for the County of Marin. He now serves in a part-time role as the executive director of the Marin Public Financing Authority, which is the JPA overseeing this project. We're also joined by our developers, I believe, that are going to be joining us remotely. That's Bruce Dorfman and Joanna Julian from Education and Housing Partners. And we have Mark Pressman and Rob Pankratz with us this evening from Wolf Hansen and Company, the public finance and investment management firm that is serving as our JPA's fiduciary financial advisor for the project. We've been fortunate to have this team guide this project, but before we get into the plan, maybe just a bit of background to bring everybody up to speed on how we got to where we are today. This project really began in 2019 when Governor Gavin Newsom issued an executive order that surplused state property that the state had no intention of developing so that it could be studied for potential development. This was one of the very first parcels that was identified in the state as a potential for development. In 2020, the state issued an RFP for a developer for the project. It was done through two state agencies, the Community Development Department and the State Real Estate Agency. Education Housing Partners was awarded the project in a very competitive grant process that was based not only on their application, but on a track record of providing very successful affordable housing educator workforce projects. At about this time, discussions began between the County of Marin and MCBE with the developer and with state agencies about the potential for building the development of education, workforce housing, and housing for County of Marin employees. MCBE and the County of Marin entered into a JPA to begin overseeing the development of the Oak Hill project in 22-23. And since then, over the last few years, permitting, the CEQA requirements and certification, pre-development processes have been completed. Currently, the site is undergoing some cleanup by the state, and we are where we are at a very important moment related to the financing of the project. But first, an overview of the project. This is 8 acres. It is 100% rental. It will be actually 250 units because it's two developments that will be built on this site. One is by Eden Housing. It's 115 units, lower income family housing from 30 to 60% of the average median income. Education Housing Partners is developing 135 units for educators and county employee between 50 to 120% of the AMI. 101 units will be for educators and 34 for county employees. There will be a shared infrastructure and parking garage and amenity areas. That's some site location drawings of the site. This is, as Matthew will get into in just a minute, going to be a very well done and very highly desired housing for our county employees and our school staff. This project has generated a lot of interest. Many of the questions and concerns that have been raised so far have been very important. They've been very relevant into the development of our guarantor financing plan. And as with any complex issue or project, there's also been much information that's been misleading or misstated. So it's good to have this opportunity to present the clear and correct picture. So as we begin, some important things to consider. When we began speaking with districts about the Oak Hills guarantor plan, we knew that it would be those districts that have set goals and priorities related to developing housing that would be the most interested in the plan. We knew that districts that do not have housing as a goal, or who may not have the same degree of challenges related to recruitment and retention, would not be interested necessarily in the plan. And that is exactly how the program is evolving. Interested districts in the College of Marin are moving forward with studying the idea and receiving additional financial information as they consider a future MOU. This afternoon, the College of Marin board met to discuss this issue, and their board spoke favorably of potentially adopting a resolution that would direct their staff to proceed with the next steps of information gathering that could potentially lead to their agreement for up to 18 units. This morning, the Marin Board of Supervisors passed a resolution to do the same for 34 units that are part of the project. Meetings will take place over the next few weeks with San Rafael City Schools and Novato. We are seeing their schools do their due diligence very, very carefully. They are important to note that they are vetting this project. They have legal counsel, they have bond counsel, they have auditors, and they have financial advisors that are evaluating and guiding their decision making. Then there's the argument that this plan is out of the ordinary, or that it's unusual or unique for schools to guarantee bonds for educator workforce housing. It is in fact very common for school districts to use their funds to back bonds and to issue things called certificates of participation, which are similar to tax-free bonds and are offered by districts to investors that are backed by the district's general fund. A recently commissioned study by the California School Board Association of 9 successful educator workforce housing projects showed that 8 of the 9 used certificates of participation based on district's general fund. In this case, as you will hear, this guarantor financial plan is similar in principle, but it greatly minimizes the risks for districts as they only guarantee their portion of the units and in return receive turnkey housing, professionally managed and dedicated to their staff. And then lastly, there's the argument that schools simply should not be in the housing business, that it's up to the cities, the county, the state to do the job. I guess I would submit that good and well-intentioned people can disagree on that issue, but I would say that it's that kind of thinking that has prevented any workforce housing from being developed in Marin for over 5 decades. Our schools have an issue. Many of our districts, our largest, our most financially strapped, have recruitment and retention revolving doors that are highly costly. They see this as a potential solution. If we don't do it for our schools, I don't think anyone else out there will do it for us. And that's why this guarantor plan is so vitally important. I'm happy to have it now presented to you by Matthew Heimel, who will go into detail.
Great, well, good evening, everyone, and thanks for having me. I know several of you, but I don't know all of you. So just a brief introduction. As Ken said, for the last over 18 years, I was a county administrator. I worked for the county for about 22 years. Prior to that, I was the mayor's budget director in the city and county of San Francisco, as well as the assistant controller. So I have a finance and a budget background largely. I retired from the county last March, so about a year ago, and with the goal of doing meaningful part-time work, and this certainly fits that requirement. I think this is a meaningful project. I feel that way because I've worked in the county for over 20 years, and having affordable housing for county workers will be meaningful to me. But it's also meaningful because my wife's a teacher and my daughter's a teacher, and I know my daughter's 27 and struggling to make have enough money to pay for her own rental housing, and this would be a great option if it were available to her. So, I'm trying to see if we can make it work, and I became the executive director in October, and largely with the goal of trying to see if this project can pencil out from a budget basis. Where is the clicker?
Nope.
So I'm going to provide an overview of about 12 slides, and then we can open it up for questions. So, as you all probably know, this was started as a partnership between the County of Marin and your office. We created the JPA to be a separate legal entity, which was established solely to finance and manage the Oak Hill Apartments. Our mission is to build and manage cost-covered affordable housing. We have a 5-member board. 3 members are appointed by the county and 2 members by MCBE. There are 2 private, resident members that are appointed by the county, in addition to Dennis Verdoni, the board supervisor. So again, you're familiar with the business case for this. The Marin Promise had funded a survey of Marin school employees and found that 1,400 county educators were interested in accessing affordable housing. Public entities in Marin have really struggled with a higher percentage of their employees living outside the county. When I became county administrator, it was roughly 50% in county, 50% out of county. It's now like 72% out of county, and among new employees, it's almost 80% out of county. And so we have recently done a market study that really basically shared with us what we kind of have known from experience, which is lower and moderate income, individuals in Marin have been crowded out of the rental market and replaced with higher income earners. So many of our employees could qualify for the housing that we're proposing to build. And it's also addressing that recruitment and retention problem that our agencies are experiencing. And my experience with the county has been that we could hire people, but if they lived an hour and a half away, within a couple of years, they would, move closer to home, take a job. So we were often training people and then losing them after a year and a half. I know there's some data that shows that younger employees in Nevada Unified average 1.6 years, and they have a turnover rate of 14%. So this is really trying to get at that retention issue. So as I mentioned earlier, by far the biggest challenge that we're facing and have faced is the budget gap. And there are 2 basic reasons we face a budget gap versus when this project was originally envisioned 4 to 5 years ago. And by far the biggest reason is the change in the interest rates. So interest rates have more than doubled over the last 3 to 5 years. If the interest rates were the same, that we would not have a budget gap. The other reason we have a budget gap is we're assuming our rental income based on rental rates that achieve the 50 to 80% AMI goal. So oftentimes when there's a budget gap in an affordable housing project, they raise the affordability rates up to 120 because they can go up to 120. But our experience has been, that's been one of the challenging, one of the reasons we have some challenging affordable housing projects, because they have increased their rental rates and therefore they're not as attractive to the employees. And so given that our mission is to provide that low and moderate income, we are basing our budget based on the 50 to 80% AMI rental rates. So to close that gap, we are doing several things. We have already received 15.7 million in grants from the state and the county. We are seeking additional grant funding. We are also working with the Marin Community Foundation to explore having a subset of our financing be at a lower interest rate to save money from our borrowing costs. As I mentioned, one lever that we have is changing the rental rate assumption, but we're really reluctant to do that given our mission. So by far the biggest strategy that we have to close the budget gap is this notion of an affordable housing guarantor program. And that's what we're going to be going over with you tonight. So overall, the concept of the guarantor program is that the county or the school districts would have a portion of the units dedicated for their employees, and in return, they would guarantee the rental income from their portion of those employees. So the county of Marin, for instance, has 2,500 employees. They only have 34 units in this complex. So chances are they will fill up those units, and if so, they would have no obligation to backfill. And many of our agencies are dedicating a smaller number of units than what they perceive to be their demand. So Nevada Unified has a goal of 200 units. They're guaranteeing 27 units. So that's one of the risk mitigation aspects, is that all of these agencies aren't guaranteeing the maximum demand that they see on the horizon. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So how would it work? So the school district would let us know the number of units they're willing to guarantee. They would, by doing the guarantee, if we get 100% of the guarantee of the units guaranteed, we estimate that that would save $10 million. And so what that means is, for the same amount of rental revenue, we can raise an additional $10 million to close the budget gap. That equates to being able to reduce rental rates by $400 a month. If we didn't get that, we would have to raise rental rates by $400 a month. So it helps us achieve our affordable housing target goals as well. And it provides dedicated housing for the districts and long-term availability for the districts that those units. So the participating agencies would get, like I said, get the dedicated units for the term of the guarantee. One of the things that we heard from both the county and the school districts is that the agencies don't want to be a landlord. And so this would not require them to be in a landlord situation. That function would be covered by the JPA, and the JPA would be doing an RFP for a property manager who would deal with those issues. It allows the district to, like I said, have dedicated units that they can plan on, count on, and use for retention of their employees. And the school districts can scale it based on their needs, with a minimum of a 9-unit block, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So this is the 9-unit block, and because we got grants, we have a mix of affordability as well as the way the construction of the units are, is that we have a mix of largely 1-bedroom units, but also 2- and 3-bedroom units. So our goal was to ensure that each of the districts would get a representative sample of our units, both from an affordability standpoint as well as the number of bedrooms. And so this breaks it down. That's, kind of lays it out that each of the, and then if a district, say like Nevada, was very interested in 27 units, you would just multiply each of these categories by 3. So they would have 3 1-bedrooms at 50% AMI, 6 at 60% AMI, 9 at 80% AMI, and so on. And what that equates to is, in the next, this is what it equates to as far as household income levels and rent levels. So, the 1-bedroom that is for 80% AMI, that would be for 1- to 2-person households up to $78,000 earning, and estimated rents of $1,700. And then, basically we're looking at an income level for households of anywhere from $68,000 to $181,000. And again, I mentioned we did a rental study that said that, based on both the schools and the counties employment base, there would be interest in over 300 individuals to rent these units every year. the rent levels would be about 30% below market, which equates to about $1,000 below what the market rate would be for each of these units. As I mentioned, the school involvement, the biggest issue that we need from schools and MCOE would be to let employees know of the program, encourage them to apply to the JPA and get on a list for eligible housing. We want to make sure that we have a list that is, and what the experience has been with affordable housing in the county is that there's usually a waiting list and there's an excess demand. And so we want to get in that position, particularly at the beginning, because that's where the biggest challenge will be filling the units at the front end. Over time, through the amount of attrition, there'd be a really big demand for a very small number of units. So it's really making sure we can lease up at the beginning. The idea of backstopping the shortfall, we talked to school districts. And basically what we heard from them is it would be very hard to try to fund something mid-fiscal year. So what we did is we created a reserve that would allow those, the JPA to fund the shortfall with the idea that then the schools would backfill. And then if we got into that situation, the goal of the JPA would be to adjust the budget to avoid those shortfalls on an ongoing basis. We're not going to plan, our goal would not be to plan to have the ongoing use of the funds from the school districts. Should the school district circumstances change, there could be a legal transfer of that obligation if it's mutually agreed upon. So if another school district or the county was interested in those additional units, a school district could enter into that kind of agreement to transfer the responsibility. So one way, that we think about this is around what's the risk, and so the way we look at this is around, we have a 4% vacancy rate assumption, which is the average in the Marin area for regular market rate housing. So we think largely that should, eliminate the risk, but even if the vacancy rates were twice the Marin average, say it was 8%, so for the 20 units that MCOE is considering for not only their employees, but other districts, that exposure would be $31,000 a year. If it were 12%, which is roughly what that Sonoma State project is experiencing, it would be $62,000. But again, the Sonoma State project is charging close to market rates. And we would be looking at charging 50 to 80%, 30% below market. So we would hope that our vacancy rate would be much lower. And then the other thing, we have a next slide around risk mitigation. So one of the things we've been working with school districts, and it's been really helpful, is to identify risk mitigation strategies. We know we can't entirely eliminate the risk, but we've taken several strategies to try to minimize that risk. As I mentioned, I think one of the biggest strategies is if we can meet our affordability goal of 50–80%, because I think then we're in a situation where there would be excess demand for those units. So that's a big part of our risk mitigation. But in addition to that, we would want to have a pre-leasing strategy to reach out to the schools and the county so that we establish waiting lists and lists for eligible members way before we have access to the property, so that we're filling those units at the front end as quickly as possible. As I mentioned, we are budgeting a vacancy rate of 4%. So there would be no obligation as long as we stay within that category. As I mentioned, we are setting up a vacancy reserve that would allow that to be tapped into during the fiscal year. And then we would notify the school district by the end of March so they can consider what funding that in the subsequent fiscal year. And I think, you know, as I was alluding to earlier, I think one of the biggest risk mitigations is that we have a pool of over 6,000 employees that could potentially live in this housing. And in nearly every case, the agency is guaranteeing a smaller subset than what they perceive the total demand to be. But if a school district was having trouble filling their units, they could take someone off the waiting list from another agency. And if we had trouble even within our participating agencies, legally, we could go to employees of cities, towns, special districts, childcare facilities, anyone that had the income under the 120%. So there's no restrictions from the state. And so that's an important safeguard as well, knowing that you could fill them with other individuals, not just those who work. We're not going out and marketing that because we don't expect to be in that situation, and we don't want to set false expectations or hopes with cities, towns, special districts. But legally, we would be able to do that. So we also understand there's a lot that still needs to be worked out. We don't have a balanced budget. And I know one of the concerns among some of the critics of the project is, why are you going forward if you don't have a balanced budget? And I think the short answer is we will not go forward if we don't have a balanced budget. This is part of an effort to reach a balanced budget, and it's a key assumption that would allow us to get closer to meeting that goal. So what we're asking for school districts in the county is a two-step process. One, are you conceptually interested in participating in the guarantor program? And two, how many units can we plan on? And so that's what we're working to with the districts. And then we're going to then work to refine the budget plan, seek additional funding, continue to address concerns that districts or the county may have, and then work with their legal representatives to finalize those agreements. Only if we have a balanced budget will we come back to the school for that final agreement and commitment. And, you know, I think one of the challenges is knowing the timeline with that. And, you know, given the fact that we won't go forward unless we have a balanced budget, there are things that we can't control. So I can't commit to a specific timeline. Our goal is to see if we can get to a balanced budget in the May or June timeframe. But, you know, there are a lot of things we don't control around interest rates or around tariffs or other things. We are currently getting bids back for our construction, so we'll know a lot more once we get those bids back. And that's going to be early May around the bids. So that's kind of a high level overview, and so I'm happy to answer questions, but Ken's here to answer questions, and we also have our financial advisor here to have specific questions.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So when the board sort of indicated that they would need to support this project, there would have been a source and use of fund, like how much the project was gonna cost, and there would have been like an allocation as to, let's just assume it's $1 million. That X would be provided by a loan, X would be provided by a grant. You have that table, can you share with us? Because what I'm hearing right now is a budget deficiency, but I want to know how much the project was expected before.
There's a budget update we provided the JPA on January 16th that lays out the project budget. You know, what we anticipate the project budget is, and based on not having revenue stream, what we thought we could revenue, and that's what created this $16.4 million gap. So that's on our website and is available to pick up.
We'll look at it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the total cost of the project is much more than, many times more than 16.
The total price, yeah, that's in the January report. It's like 118.8 million. Yeah.
So 16 on.
Well, I've listened and gone out to hear your projections and your comments in several different venues. And I really suggest to the board, to whatever their role is we have in this, that you listen to those presentations. I believe the Board of Supervisors presentation is on record, and you can listen to that. And listen carefully to the people who came to speak about this project on the other side. Not because anybody is opposed to the project, they're just opposed to the guarantee. This board, based on everything I've read, and I've read pretty much everything, went down one yellow brick road on this JPA. And now they're going down a road that's covered with broken glass. Because you've got risk involved. There was no risk whatsoever considered. People started talking about this for a JPA. That was not even in the cards anywhere. And now we're seeing a situation where there is a lot of risk. So we're
Excuse me,
seeing,
we're here to right now ask questions about the project, and I'm not sure, I'm not sure.
wait a second, is that what it says? She says you can't comment? It means
No,
you
I
can't
just
comment.
want to
Okay,
make
tell me.
sure I just want to make sure that we.
You don't want me to
are-
talk, is what it is. And what I really believe is that this board needs to know what has been said elsewhere. You haven't gone to all of these meetings. And the one concern that people have, only concern on the other side of this issue is the guarantor issue. Now, if it's the $10 million, get it someplace else. The Marin Community Foundation has a ton of money. I worked very hard on the Buck litigation to make sure that that money stayed in Marin County. They can put up the money. Marin promised. There are maybe George Lucas. We have a board member who works for him, and he's a foundation. There are people here with money. Why are we taking a chance with putting this on the backs of schools? And I've not seen, and I'm concerned about the numbers. I don't see any numbers that you provided that really guarantee that these are this 4% or it's only going to be this percentage, et cetera. And what are you going to do about evictions? What are you going to do? Maybe you've already calculated it. I'd like to know that. And I do pro bono work to assist people in evictions. And I can tell you that sometimes it takes 6 months to 8 months to have someone leave. If somebody decides to stay, 2, 3, 4 people, they lose their job. And they decide to stay there. There's no income. You can't put anybody else in there. What happens then? How does that factor into your pro forma documents? Does it?
That would be part of the vacancy rate assumption of the 4%.
But that's not a vacancy rate. There's somebody there. They're just not leaving. And I can tell you that that is one of the major problems for a lot of landlords in this community. And I don't see that factored in anywhere. Then you've got an apartment that you can't rent.
I have a question, kind of sort of along the lines that Nancy's asking. So so is it the school districts that are gonna guarantee, like Nevada's gonna take 20 and Orange County is gonna take so many? So what if Marin County Office of Education took 0? Then there would be no obligation? So who ultimately has the obligation?
Correct.
That's my question.
Yeah, I mean, basically, those agencies that serve as the guarantor have the obligation. I mean, I think the MCBE is a little bit of a different circumstance because it's the umbrella organization for all the smaller districts. But
So if Nevada
if Nevada,
said I want 20 units and then couldn't fill them, who has to pay for those 20 units? Is it Nevada or
Yes.
MCBE?
no, it's Nevada.
Okay.
Well, that's why Tam said no.
Or they can go to the school choice for them to make.
And like I said, you know,
So
I
even
think
only-
Ken alluded to this, like when, you know, our goal was to be, you know, proportional. And so I think it was important that the larger districts were interested in participating in this. But we always understood that the smaller districts who hadn't been considering building housing on their own would probably not participate and would be covered by the pool notion. For those districts that have, you know, looked into building affordable housing, this represents a much, you know, less risky, less costly, you know, alternative to doing that. And so that's why Nevada and San Rafael and College of Marin are more interested.
So if the Marin County Office of Education said we want 20 units, then they would just guarantee those 20 units. And
Yes, that's right.
That makes sense.
It's just that we need to really know whether each of these units, depending on their allocation, to do that, because while let's say one unit can actually provide that guarantee. If we're talking about other units and the other school districts are not able to do that, the project will fail or we may have some problems.
Yes, although again, it's compartmentalized around the obligation to, you know, the agency. And so that's the notion of being in a bigger pool where if a district is having trouble, let's say, let's make it up, Nevada was 27 units and they're having trouble filling 4 units. Then we would go to them and say, look, we have 4 people on the list from the county. Do you want us to keep those units open so that you have that available to you, but you may experience that cost? Or do you want us to fill them, you know, on a as needed basis with those county employees, and then once they exit, then you'll have those units back?
One of the issues that I see is that, okay, I'm going back to the sources in this fund. Let's assume that the project would cost 20 million. And I want to piggyback out of Nancy's comment, whatever the gap is, which is causing this risk of rent vacancy, risk of not enough cash flow to that service, if we could in fact expand the people who would participate in providing the funds, then this risk that we will have to take care of resulting from the cash flow from the rentals would be either diminished or reduced. So I think, and again, I haven't looked at the sources in this plans, but I think maybe one of the strategies we need to look at who can additionally fund these projects so that our cash flow, and we know what the cash flow is going to be, can really service whatever the X amount of a loan is that need to be serviced given a certain interest rate.
That's essentially what we're, you know, I mean, that, you know, we're assuming the 50 to 80% revenue base, and then we're saying who can be the guarantor. And like I was saying, is I think that the school agencies aren't guaranteeing the maximum of what their demand is. They're guaranteeing a subset of that they're confident that they could fill, therefore not to be in that guarantor position.
But what I'm saying is, let's try to get more funding from other.
I would love to get more, I would love to get more funding, and if there's, you know, if there were ways of filling the gap in a different way, we're, you know, totally open to that. It's just that, you know, we have a gap, and so what are the strategies that could close that gap? We have been putting out grant requests and stuff, and we've been successful. I mean, we've gotten $15 million worth of grant, but you know, how likely it is we'll get another 15 million. And so that's why we're looking at this strategy.
I wonder whether the cost of our project is X amount because we are developing a really nice property. I'm thinking if I'm a teacher or whoever may be the tenants for this property, I think what's important to me is I don't want to live over in Sonoma, do my commute. This is my current housing situation. I will be happy with a unit that is serving what truly is my need. I don't need something that has double window, you know, whatever improvements that there may be on the property. And if you look at that, is there a way to sort of minimize the project costs so that our funding, the project cost minus the funding, would only leave a smaller amount of borrowing, and then your cash flow would be sufficient to do that service?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is new construction, so it's,
Yeah.
it needs to be built to a certain standard. As part of the bids that we're getting from the construction agency, we will get value engineering options, so that's something that we could look at. If there was reasonable, you know, reductions that could reduce the cost, that could help close the gap as well. But we don't anticipate that being anywhere near what the value of the guarantee, you know, the $10 million. And, you know, and like I said, even if we get $10 million, you know, the benefit of the guarantor, we still have more money to close the gap, that more strategies. And so value engineering would be a strategy, getting additional grant funds would be a strategy. There, you know, we're open to, you know, whatever strategy works. You know, my role is really trying to give the board options, it's like, what would it take to get this built and what's a reasonable plan? And that's what I'm working towards.
I'm just wondering if for the benefit of the public who are thankfully here and for our education, you had mentioned that potentially if the school districts, which I've been able to be at the JPA meeting, so I've heard positive support of this, especially from the teaching community and from the Nevada Unified School District board members. So I'm happy that I heard that because it just stuck with me. The average tenure, 1.6 years of a new teacher in Nevada was horrific. And I'm sure that's true everywhere else. So I'm lightened in terms of what sounds like a heavy lift. That other agencies too might be able to avail themselves if the school districts couldn't fill these number of units. But I think it would also be helpful if these are, and again, we have the benefit of the presentation of the developers, these are successful programs that they have done elsewhere in the state and beyond. And I'm just wondering if you could list them for me. I my memory, I know one was in Santa Barbara, one was in San Luis Obispo, and one was in Los Angeles.
I can work with Ken and we can
get those.
provide you
That-
with summary of
I think
those
that
that
would
have
make
been
everyone else
successful. I mean, we're trying to learn from those who haven't been successful, but there have been, successful ones as
Right.
well.
Were those comps?
Pardon?
Were those comps? Were those certificates of participation?
We need to look at the detail of the ones that we
I
have.
heard everybody saying they were all certificates of participation. They weren't this.
Well, a certificate of participation.
Yeah, you can't say that, Nancy. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, a certificate of participation is saying that you would, in addition to using the rental income that you generate for the school district, you would use your general fund. So this is less onerous on school districts than if they had done a COP.
Right, I'm looking at the county, I'm not looking at the school district. I'm looking at the county doing certificate of participation, not the school district.
I think what's important to remember too is that this project started off as something that would pencil out. But as we all know, and as your children know, anyone trying to buy a house, the interest rates have gone through the roof. So that's really the logjam place, the squeeze point that we came to.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was saying at the board meeting today, when I was the county administrator, the project came to us with the interest rates where they were, the project could pencil out without requiring this guarantor obligation.
Well, it's also the bond issue, the bond issuers are willing to take on this risk. And
So they're
willing
willing to
That's
take
not
on the
true.
risk, they just ask for a higher interest
to
rate.
get a higher interest rate.
Okay, that's not true, but you've had a good long time to speak, which is great. I think now if we could hear from the public, it would be.
Well, I have some other questions. This 1.6 years of longevity in Devon. My understanding is that that was not based just on whether or not they had housing. There were other reasons that were related to the 1.6 longevity for the teachers and the turnover in Devon.
I'm sure that's true.
Additionally, I'd like to know where, if you figured it out in the budget for MCOE, if this kicks in, and we have to backstop this, what programs do we have to strip out of MCOE in order to backstop?
Well, I will certainly defer to John and his team on that question, but what I will say is the pool of public school employees that will be among those who are not participating in the program is over 2,000 employees. So you would have over 2,000 employees that would be eligible for those 20 slots. So that would be, mitigating the risk of MCOE being put in that position.
And you heard the representation made by the board member of Tam High School today, which you read into the record as being present. Can you explain why he presented it as he did and Tam decided not to do it based on financial information which you're providing us now, which they rejected?
Well, I certainly can't explain for an individual why they thought what they thought, but what I will say is, like I said at the beginning, is we didn't expect every school district to participate. It was, that wasn't the thing. I think one of the things that he spoke about was, whether it would affect your bond rating and what, having a contingent liability. And, you know, for a 9-unit, like if you do the vacancy rate for 9 units, if it were 8%, it would be $13,000, the cost to backfill that difference. If it were 12%, it would be $26,000. It seems to me unlikely that that would trigger a different bond rating for a school district. But, you know, every school district is gonna need to talk to their financial advisor, talk to their legal team to be made comfortable with it. Generally speaking, I think this would be a footnote on the financial statement. You know, this is an obligation, and then if the obligation was triggered, it would be part of your annual finances.
Did you examine the material that gentleman referred to, with their financial advisors at Town High Senior High School District?
He did not provide that to me, so if you have it, I'm happy to look at it.
I think that would be a very good idea because
Can I just add one thing? Let me clarify that that financial advisor was not for the district. That is one board member's opinion that you heard today. The district never voted on this plan. In fact, never even saw the plan presented. So it's a misstatement to say that the district rejected the plan. They never voted on it. That board member and the president of the board made a unilateral decision not to have the board hear the presentation. What was discussed at their board meeting was the concerns other board members had that they never had a chance to hear the presentation. That's a big difference from them rejecting.
Did you hear the discussion about the bond statement that we
I
provided?
did, and I'd love to see exactly the literature that you referred to and that he provided.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Well,
I think
of
you
course
should
look
take a
at
look
it.
this because they did reject it.
They did not reject it. They did not. You're misstating the
But
fact.
If I may interject for just a moment,
They're not participating.
I would like to hear from the public at this point. Specious claims that are thinly veiled anti-affordable housing should stop. Anyone who wants to speak.
I want to stop you right now. I am not anti-affordable housing. And I think that that is absolutely inappropriate for you to say. I am in favor of affordable housing. And for you to turn around and try to make people boogeymen because they're scared about school districts having to lay off teachers, declining enrollment, terrible scores, and now you're ready to turn around and risk all their money.
And
Why?
you're taking
Up people's time by turning around and attacking people for being against affordable housing. Create your own boogeyman and get off the JPA. You've got a conflict.
Excuse me,
I'm sure you.
can we just cut this discussion for now and let's hear from the public?
Making
Because I don't think it
$100,000
would
a year
end.
off Oak Hill.
I don't think it would end.
I would like to make one comment before we go to the public. I'm sorry, I don't have in front of me a letter that was in the IJ a couple of weeks ago that one trainer wrote. But she said so much better than what I believe, which is we need to keep our teachers. We need to be able to recruit teachers. And we, my little granddaughter's 5 years old. She just, today's her birthday, she's 5, she's in TK. And I have another one who is actually starting in special education program. Both of them need teachers desperately, especially the little ones, they need teachers who are gonna be here, who are gonna stay here, and who are gonna come here and have a place to live. And I think that there are times when you have to choose between risks. There's no decision is ever gonna be perfect. In our whole life, everything has pros and cons. And we have to weigh the pros and cons. But I vote always in favor of what's gonna be best for the children. And right now, I can't see this a different way. If experts in the people who are making this plan have worked so hard to find a solid way to make it work and have faith that it's gonna work, I don't think that it's all fantasy, and I put my total heart into it, and I just wanna say that.
But you're gonna risk the schools, you're
And
gonna
we
risk
are-
the school's finances in order to get into the housing.
We do need to, is there any other board member who has a question or comment? before we move on? Okay, I would like to hear from the public, just in the interest of time. I think we're there now, so who would like to ask a question?
There's a list, isn't there?
So,
Yes.
I'm sorry, I recommend you have members of the public go to the line up at the podium.
Yes,
If they'd like to make
please.
public comment.
And was there a sign-in list that I missed?
Yes,
That's not- I don't-
Okay. Well, I'll ask you to go to the podium and then you can state your name, and you will have or 2 minutes.
It's kind of like a clock.
Is it 2 minutes? Okay, thank you. Please introduce yourself clearly, and the clock is to your left for 2 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ron Brown, I'm a resident of San Rafael.
Please.
Yes, within my role as co-chair of the Marine Organizing Committee's Affordable Housing Team, into dozens of hearings in recent years on affordable housing projects. And inevitably, someone will rise up to the meeting and say, I'm in favor of affordable housing, but there's a long list of potential buts. But the project is too tall, but the project is too big, but the project will generate too much traffic. But the project is too ugly. And this one seems to be that the project is too risky. But I have my own set of buts. But Marin residents, when asked what the most important problem facing residents of this county is, overwhelmingly say affordable housing. 60,000 cars a day drive into Marin with an enormous toll in terms of what that does to our environment and what it does to our residents who are stuck in traffic continuously, and I'm sure I don't have to tell you about that problem. What kind of risk does Marin assume when a large number of its first responders are living outside of the county? And in the event of an earthquake or a major fire, it might take them hours to get to their job if they can make it at all. And as has been said over and over again, what kind of risk is there when the best and brightest of our young teachers choose not to drive an hour each way to work, but to spend their time with their family and to work closer to where they can afford to live? We've heard that 300 county employees say that they would be interested in living in this development. That's over twice the total capacity of the development. And that's not even adding in the, whoops.
Yeah, please finish your sentence.
Go ahead.
I'll finish that sentence in one other. That's not even adding the demand that there would be from school employees. I urge you to continue to take whatever steps you can to move this project forward.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Pat Lively from the Marine Organizing Committee. And I just want to share a story. I was talking about this project with a friend who is a teacher in Daly City. Daly City just opened at the beginning of this school year a affordable housing project that their school district put up for 56 units. Those filled immediately. So the concept that in a high rent area, there wouldn't be enough people just strikes me as unreasonable. Thank you.
Thank you.
I am Linda Howman. I'm also with the Marine Organizing Committee. And my husband and I are 30-year residents of San Rafael. We moved here specifically to raise our children in a wonderful environment with good public schools. They are now successful adults. And I just want to really urge you to move forward with this project. We absolutely need more affordable housing, not only for our teachers, but our rest of our workforce. And these excellent teachers provide outstanding education that Marin prides itself on offering. This has a domino effect on attracting families to Marin, and this maintains our reputation as a wonderful place to live and thrive. And the positive points that for approving and moving ahead are: one, the land for this project is state-owned and is provided for the development. Two, the risk for the guarantee is shared across several entities so that no one district is on the potential of all empty units. And let's see, what else do I want to say here? That three, the other projects across the state have been successful in providing affordable housing to teachers. And four, the cost benefit analysis points to a net positive when you weigh in the cost of teacher retention and attraction of new teachers.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jenny Silva with the Marin Environmental Housing Collaborative, and I'm here to urge you to take all steps possible to move this project forward. And there has been a lot of discussion about this project. I've been in all 3 meetings today. And I really, I could spend all my time talking about each individual argument, but I could say at the end of the day, do the benefits outweigh the risks? And the benefits for this project are enormous. We've talked about the turnover rate that there is, the cost to replace it. I'm pretty confident that if you looked at it, this is going to be a net reduction in the operating costs for the schools that participate in this program. Not to mention the benefits to education and the quality of education that other people have mentioned. Also, this project could have people living in it as soon as 2 years. There is no other project on the horizon that will house as many people that is out there. If we delay this, we push this off, we are pushing off that benefit of providing housing for folks. On the flip side, the risk is very small. The challenges that Marin County is facing are being faced by many other school districts across the state. And many districts have undergone what Linda just talked about, forming their own housing. And in that case, they are giving up their assets, they are fronting cash, they are doing pre-development work, and they are taking on the full development risk. In this case, that work is all being done for us. All we have to say is we're going to fill those units at the end. The amount of risk is dramatically less than if we did it ourselves. And we are looking at doing it ourselves in Marin County. It seems like this is a great first start to get going. So anyway, thank you. I encourage you to move this forward as much as you can. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Chandra Alexander. I am the Chief Executive Officer of Community Action Marin. I'm not going to repeat what has already been very well stated, but want to urge continued investigation and support of this project. Let me tell you, Community Action Marin is the county's largest nonprofit provider of social services. We are also the county's largest provider of free and affordable childcare in our community. We partner with school districts to ensure that people of low income have what they need to get to thriving. This is an opportunity for us, I think a generational opportunity to invest in the people who make our schools, our public institutions run, our teachers, our school staff, our county employees. 3 things that you already know: workforce housing is essential infrastructure. We can't address poverty or deal with educational inequities that we're facing in Marin County if our teachers and public workers are being displaced. This development offers us a solution. The second thing you already know is that this has built-in flexibility and offers us an opportunity as a real solution to mitigate risk incredibly thoughtfully. We know that, importantly, the third thing, there's no plan B. There is a real opportunity and there's no other comparable project in the pipeline. So this is our chance to act. This is an opportunity for all of us to move forward from conversations about workforce housing and affordable housing into action. We have to do something now. This is housing justice. Personally, I also think it's common sense. Thank you.
Thank you. We have somebody on Zoom who would like to comment, and I'd like to go to her now, Joanna Julian.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, board members. My name is Joanna Julian with Education Housing Partners, and we're the developer for the Oak Hill Workforce Housing Project. And I appreciate the opportunity to offer a few comments for some additional context. Education Housing Partners has been developing and advising school districts on employee housing projects such as this one throughout the state and for decades. And in our experience, one of the most common barriers to employee housing projects actually moving forward is that districts were not able to come up with the financing to fund the development on their own. And that includes funding and undertaking site due diligence, design, entitlement, CEQA review, permitting, all of which takes years and great expense before ultimately even getting to the construction of the project. And in this case, what's being brought before you is a project that has already completed design, already completed entitlement and CEQA, with permitting in progress, and will soon be ready to begin construction pending, of course, a balanced budget. So this guarantor program being considered is in and of itself a pretty powerful risk mitigation strategy that would give MCOE and the participating districts access to affordable housing for their employees. But compared to undertaking a project independently, as many other districts have done, as mentioned earlier, it allows you to do so at a greatly reduced risk and expense. And as we all know, recruiting and retaining teachers and school staff, all of whom are essential to our schools, it's an urgent challenge, particularly in Marin. And by offering these units at rents that are 30% below market, as we're proposing here, MCOE and the districts will be able to better compete for hiring quality employees and for being able to retain those employees over time. And that benefits not only the employees themselves, but also students by having continuity and experienced staff. It benefits MCOE and the districts operationally by reducing turnover costs and time spent recruiting, and those are significant. So I'll end there, but lastly, would just like to thank the board for your thoughtful consideration and questions already for this program. And thanks again for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Joanna. Next, please.
Short person here. Hi, my name is Judith Bloomberg. I'm a member of Congregation Rhoda Shalom, which is in Santa Fe, and a longtime leader in the Marin Organizing Committee. Our family moved here to Marin more than 40 years ago. And while we could have lived elsewhere in the Bay Area, we specifically chose Marin County because it was a place where we felt our children would have the benefit of attending a quality public school, not a private school, a public school. Right now, Marin, as you all have heard, Marin County schools are struggling to hire and retain educators and staff due to our extremely high housing costs. In my own family, there are 2 teachers, and while they wanted to remain in Marin, they both work and they rent in San Francisco. And why? Because the cost of living is less. As pointed out, I'm going to shorten this too. As pointed out in today's New York Times, there's a quote that I brought to you all. Quote, "The United States has a housing crisis in large measure because our society has become better at saying no than saying yes. We become so focused on the cost of building that we've lost sight of the damage that we are causing by not building. This is a really good project. The county, the cities haven't had to really pay out, as pointed out, to do all the pre-development even to get to this point. This is a good project. It is good for Marin, and it should go forward. Thank you very much."
Thank you.
I'm short, but not that short. I'm Victoria Coldridge from UU Marin and the Marin Organizing Committee. I am in favor of this project. I want you to move forward and do as much as you can. I hear amongst the board fear. That's what I'm hearing. Fear about the risk. look at the numbers of how many employees, 2,000 employees. You're not gonna have trouble filling these units within a very short period of time. You're gonna have a waiting list of people who wanna get in there. We must take care of our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
I came late to this gathering. I'm active in other groups that are working for social justice in Marin County. You're talking about risk, yes, I think there's the risk of teachers, we've already said it, leaving. We need quality education. We don't have teachers in the back of their head saying, you know, I need to be with my family, I gotta move out of here as soon as I can get another possibility. I had that experience. I wanted to be a social worker here in Marin, but you know, there was no, it was full up. So I had to work in Oakland. So I'm really concerned that in the back of the head, the teachers wanting to move out. So the risk is you have a teacher that has in the back of their head wanting to move out as they need to be quality working here for quality education for the children. I live in the canal, the children need quality education. And if you have in the back of your head that you're gonna move out at some point because the family needs you, or it's long distance, that's a problem, that's the risk that you're facing. So please, it's spread around, you know, the financing of this. And there's examples from other counties where these things are working. So please, 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 support this project. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would you like to tell us your name?
John Reynolds, I'm sorry. John Reynolds, I live in the canal area. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else in our audience would like to speak? Okay, okay,
I have a comment I'd like to make. Here's a plan B. Everybody's looking for a plan B?
President Linder, are you
Build
for the comments?
Build the project,
Yeah,
but just
I'll
get the county to be the guarantor on the Marin Community Foundation. If the risk is so slight, those two entities or these people that just left us this banner, the North Wayne Leadership Council, get some of these people to take on the guarantee so that the schools are not facing the problems that they may face if this thing goes the wrong way. I think it's wrong to try to put at risk the districts in this school if this thing goes the wrong way. I really think more effort should be made to get additional funding. $10 or $15 million. Risk is so slight. Get Marin Community Foundation, get the county to back.
Nancy, you said a lot, but the bottom line is this board supports this project.
Whether it does or not, that doesn't mean that they have to put up money.
You can keep talking, but this board
Okay,
supports.
we're going to adjourn this meeting now. I don't think we need a vote today. No, there's we
Got 3 new members on this. That's the way it goes. That's the case.
20 years.
You made your point, and say you're correct.
That's why I was like. I'm out.